Setting up your RC car for a track can be a bit overwhelming for beginners. There's a decent amount to worry about and even more to learn. What kind of springs do I use? What shock fluid should I use? Should I use sway bars for my track or not? Do I need toe in or toe out, and what do they do? Now let me be clear here. I'm not a pro. Setting up your car is something that you have to learn over time, and it comes with experience. This is why I'm not going to go over more complicated things, but the absolute basics. Just enough to get you started in getting an understanding of what does what. It's also important to note that I won't be going over tires in this video specifically. With that being said, let's get started. The first and most important thing is your shocks and springs. Shocks and springs are your second line of defense against bumps, the first being your tires. Both the springs and shocks play an important role in how your car handles its weight, but more specifically, how it transfers its weight. Let's focus for now on the shocks themselves, or the pistons. The shock pistons on an RC car works pretty much the exact same as you'd see on a regular car. A piston then uses shock oil to control the speed of the piston's movement. The thicker the shock oil, the slower it will move. The thinner the shock oil, the faster it will move. Changing the shock oil in your shocks can have a few effects depending on where you change it, and let's go over that now. Stiffening up your shock oil will cause the car to feel more stable and will allow it to handle more smoothly. This also extends to jumps, as it will allow the car to land without bottoming them out / slapping the chassis on the floor. However, using too thick of a shock oil will cause you to lose grip in more bumpy parts of the track. Using thinner oil will allow you to have better grip over more bumpy parts of the track, and will cause the car to react a bit quicker to inputs. However, having too thin of oil will cause the car to bottom out over jumps and roll too much in corners. It will also cause the car's suspension to feel a bit too springy. It's important to match your shock oil to your springs as well. Stiffening up at the front of the car will cause the car to handle smoother in high-speed corners, but will cause you to lose a little bit of low-speed cornering and lose a bit of responsiveness. Softening up the front will cause you to gain responsiveness in the front and give you better low-speed cornering, but will cause the car to feel a bit more unstable at speed. Stiffening up the rear will cause the steering to be more responsive, whereas softening up the rear will make it easier to drive and give you more rear traction while accelerating. I said this before, but it's very important to match your springs to your shock oil, and to make sure your suspension is balanced and not over or undersprung. Next up we have camber. Camber is the angle at which your wheels and tires stand relative to the ground. You always want to have some form of negative camber as opposed to positive camber, as you'll want to have a better contact patch with your tires. When you turn in a corner, your entire car leans like this. This changes the contact patch on the outside tires. Adding negative camber compensates for this by allowing the whole tire to contact the ground in a lean. The rule of camber is that the softer your suspension is, the more your car is going to lean in a corner. Therefore, the more negative camber you're going to need. Just try not to overdo it. Next up we have toe. Toe in is when the car's wheels point inward, and toe out is when they point outward. Front toe in causes the car to feel more stable in a straight line and coming out of corners, but can also cause a little bit of understeer if used too much. Front toe out causes the car to have a lot more initial turn in, but will also cause the car to be a bit more unstable on straights. Try to avoid using more than 2 degrees of toe out. Rear toe in stabilizes the car, but too much can cause the car to lose a little bit of rear grip. Rear toe out is never used and causes the car to be very unstable. Next up we have anti-roll bars, or sway bars as they're more commonly known. Most carpet spec cars come with sway bars, as they are best used on high grip smooth surfaces like carpet or AstroTurf. On this bumpy clay track I ran both with and without sway bars, and I definitely preferred the way it drove without them. If you must run a sway bar on a really bumpy track, try to run a very thin one. A sway bar at the front causes the car to have less low speed steering, but it will be a bit more consistent. It will also cause the rear to have more grip and will prevent the front from suddenly hooking. A sway bar on the rear will give the car a bit more steering both high and low speed, and it can also make powering out of corners and lining up for jumps a bit easier. Next up we have ride height. Ride height is pretty simple. It's how high your car rides above the ground. A higher ride height will make the car feel better in jumps, and it will jump better, but it can feel tippy or even flip over in high grip conditions. Lowering the car will make the car feel more direct and potentially make it corner faster. And it will also make it a lot harder to traction roll. However, over bumpy sections it can very much go wrong. Lastly, we have shock mounting locations. Every racing rig I know of all have multiple mounting locations for you to mount your shocks. This allows you to adjust your shocks to sit more vertically or more horizontally. Having the shocks mounted more vertically will cause the car to act more direct and allow for easier landings from larger jumps. Having them mounted more horizontally will cause the car to have a lot more side bite or lateral grip, and will cause the car to feel a bit more smooth. Those are the absolute basics when it comes to setup for 10th scale racing. I've linked a few videos and other sites that go further into detail about things I went over and some things I didn't, like roll sensor. The goal of this video is to give the absolute basic understanding of what does what in your car, and I hope this video helped. If you like this video and want to see more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and like the video if you liked it. Also, if you have any more wisdom you'd like to share, I'd recommend putting it in the comment section below. Anything helps. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.